The U.S. blockade of Iran just got extended. Listen to this.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says that the United States can maintain the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely, telling reporters, quote, "We will rotate ships in and out as we have, and we will continue to do that."
Hey, Martha, the war of words over who controls the Strait of Hormuz right now has become really quite surreal. The U.S. naval blockade is in full effect. It is designed, of course, to prevent Iranian or Iranian-linked vessels from transiting the strait. And as a result of that blockade, President Trump says, quote, "The USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. I think we will keep it. Our naval blockade is being called by everyone a wall of steel, and there is nothing Iran can do about it." Iran says there is plenty it can and is doing about it. And, quote, "The Strait of Hormuz, as before, remains under the full management and control of the Islamic Republic of Iran. No commercial vessel or oil tanker can or will be able to transit the strait safely without the authorization and supervision of Iran's powerful armed forces." Now, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says around 9 million barrels of oil a day are getting through the strait. That's compared to around 20 million barrels before the war began. Secretary Wright says millions more are going through other methods such as pipelines. But clearly, we're all talking about the Strait of Hormuz right now, Martha. The stated aim of the war in the first place, preventing Iran ever getting a nuclear weapon, is very much on the back burner for now, at least.
Well, it's only on the back burner if you think they still have the capability to build something like that. And now the big question is, how long can Iran hold out under this new siege, which will now last forever?
Well, look, that's kind of the war of words, but I think on the ground what we're seeing is that Iran has disrupted trade. There are debates about how many barrels of oil are flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. There are reports, including from our own Secretary of Energy, that some ships are turning off their transponders and they're able clandestinely almost to get oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. But I think for sure we could tell by the gas prices we're faced with here that some of the global trade in oil has been disrupted, and that impacts the prices. I think the larger question for the Trump administration is going to be to deal with our strategic objectives, and that was always to get a better deal than JCPOA, from which the first Trump administration withdrew. That's dealing with Iran's nuclear program, their ballistic missiles. If we don't induce Iran to negotiate in good faith, then we will have to resort to, and most likely, future kinetic strikes.
And Dan, I think many people would say a lot of those goals have been accomplished with Iran's military and naval assets being so degraded.
Correct. And that's why you've got ships getting out of the Strait of Hormuz, despite what Iran says. Iran's out there claiming they're in total control, but how do they even know what's going on? They don't have the Navy or the Air Force that they had before this whole thing started. They don't know what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz, and nobody knows what happens to a ship that turns off its transponder and is guided out of this place in the middle of the night. But the next phase of this is going to be all about the money, and it's going to do something Iran can't stop. Listen.
Economic fury, and we went from epic fury to economic fury. And at the president's orders, we have raised the level even again. And watch this space for more announcements coming next week, because we are going to apply measures like have never been seen in the history of economic isolation on a country.
Did you hear that? Economic isolation of the country. They are going to completely cut Iran off financially, because all of the money that Iran makes, it goes right to their military. The IRGC runs the majority of businesses in Iran right now. Any money, any economic activity there benefits a military regime that has promised to be hostile and has been hostile to this entire region for 47 years. But that's not the only thing on the table. Look at this.
I want to ask you about the strategy right now, because President Trump has said that he's going to go, in his words, low key on Iran right now, preferring to, exert a lot of economic pressure on Iran at the moment instead of military pressure. What do you make of that? How much runway do we have left on just kind of isolating isolating Iran economically. How much longer will that work until they have to resort to perhaps other military means?
Yeah, I think we're almost in a war of economic attrition.
That's
Iran
what it is.
wants to exact a price on the world economy, and we have effectively blockaded Iran and really wreaked havoc on Iran's economy. Their currency is in free fall. And that does have an impact on the amount of money that Iran would have to spend on reconstituting their ballistic missile program, which you rightly noted has been largely destroyed, although there are enough missiles spread throughout the country to cause some harm to our bases in the region. I think that's what the Trump administration needs to be thinking about is at some point, do we need to go back and continue to launch strikes? As effective as all of our strikes were, we did not induce Iran to negotiate in good faith. So that sort of an agreement doesn't look like it's going to happen.
It doesn't look like Iran is going to be willing to negotiate in good faith at any point in the near future. They just broke the memorandum of understanding that President Trump and their president signed, and they broke it within 3 days. They've never done anything during this entire ceasefire that actually led down a path of peace. They bought themselves time. They tried to go back on the offensive to try and get a better deal. It didn't work, and now they're playing their Hormuz card, if you want to call it that, where they attempt to cut off the global economy. And the problem is they don't have the military means to back up their claims over the Strait of Hormuz, which they would need to get the price of oil to skyrocket. It's not at $200 a barrel. It's not at $300 a barrel. We do not have a worldwide depression where the countries of the world are begging President Trump to just surrender because Iran has won. The opposite of that has happened. Now the only question is, how long is Iran going to try and hold out?
I'm sure the president is pulsing his intelligence community to look at how Iran would respond to the various policy options we have at our disposal. And perhaps in the coming weeks and months, the president will revisit other options. But for now, we're going to turn up the heat, continue to turn up the heat on Iran's economy.
I will note, Secretary Hegseth, the Defense Secretary of War, he says that the U.S. can basically indefinitely keep Iran isolated.
That's a huge
with
claim.
Blockades, just by swapping in and out vessels. But I guess I come back to this question of for how long, Dan? You said that the Trump administration will have to continue to revisit and evaluate their weapons. What would you look to just make a determination, or if you were advising the Trump administration, look, now is the time, you've got to go back to military strikes?
We know the answer to this. Within the next year and a half, the pipelines and the land routes around the Strait of Hormuz will be completed by nations like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. So within a year and a half, the Strait of Hormuz becomes irrelevant. This idea of an indefinite U.S. naval blockade doesn't have to be indefinite as far as it doesn't have to last until the end of time. It just has to last until the Strait of Hormuz doesn't exist anymore as the strategic asset Iran thought they had to try and exert pressure on the U.S. in the upcoming midterms. Check this out.
The United States' baseless claims that vessels are transiting the Strait of Hormuz normally, which demonstrate the desperation and helplessness of the country's military, are nothing but falsehoods and lies. The Strait of Hormuz remains under the full management and control of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
This is like a different...
Really? Iran claiming it has complete control over the Strait?
Yeah, really?
This comes as Iran's foreign minister issues a warning saying, quote, the U.S. has long miscalculated due to intelligence failures. Case in point, the war in Iran. Now an even bigger miscalculation on the Strait of Hormuz.
Wow.
The tough talk comes after President Trump said the U.S. has, quote, total control of the waterway and thinks we will keep it.
And we have the proof of that in the oil prices.
He's also a senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute of Study of War. General, who's right?
Yeah, who's right? Great question.
Well, both of them have something to say about this, in my judgment, okay? So let's unpack it a little bit so our audience can understand. Obviously, we have a naval blockade in, and nothing going to an Iranian port or coming out of an Iranian port is able to take place. We've turned around 55 ships, we've disabled 3, and we've boarded 2. So that is control. There's no doubt about that in terms of that specific trafficking, and that's sizable in of itself. The second thing the United States is doing, we have successfully demined more than one route in the Straits of Hormuz, and obviously that has long-term implications itself.
And with the degradation of Iran's naval capabilities, once you demine an area of the Strait of Hormuz, they don't have the ability to go out there and put new mines, which would be a threat to tankers that want to come out. But just before we continue, this is a paid advertisement for Rumble Wallet, who's sponsoring this portion of the show. What if your bank told you no to your own money? Delayed transfers, frozen accounts, unexpected limits. It happens more often than you think. That's exactly why crypto exists. It gives you control, not partial control, actual ownership. But most people never try it because it feels complicated. That's where Rumble Wallet comes in. Yes, it's a wallet where you can store your crypto, but it's so much more than that. You can buy crypto in minutes, send it wherever you want, or cash out at any time. No waiting around and wondering when your money will clear. It connects with MoonPay, so you can add your debit card, credit card, or bank account and be up and running fast. And inside the wallet, you can choose what you want: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stable coins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. And check this out, for a limited time, you can start your wallet with $20 in US stablecoin USAT for tipping Rumble creators like me by entering my exclusive promo code CashJordan20 when you sign up right now. So scan the QR code or follow the link in the description of this video and try it for yourself. And don't forget to use my promo code CashJordan20 and claim $20 for tipping in USAT. For some of you, this might be the first crypto that you've ever owned, and it's free. And once you use it, you'll understand the difference between accessing your money and actually owning it. Restrictions apply. There are a limited number of entries available. Terms and conditions apply. See the description or visit rumble.com/promo-official-rules for details.
Then we're transiting ships along the southern route off the coast of Oman.
Yep.
And CENTCOM is doing that. Transponders are normally off, that's, revealing their location, usually done at night. And we're also protecting them in that transit. And those transits are safely done and completed. And obviously those numbers have gradually increased into the double-digit number of ships. So that's the reality there in terms of what the United States is controlling. So what does the Iranians actually control?
Good
what
question.
They're doing, it's less about control, and it's more about influencing shipbuilders through intimidation and coercion.
That's right. They're intimidating people, they're coercing people, they're threatening people. They're not actually able to do much to back up these threats. But remember, it only takes one drone. It only takes one object launched at a ship that costs millions of dollars to build, and people lose their investment. So people don't want to lose their investment. At the exact same time, every time Iran does anything and they get out there on the news and they speak to their own people, like we just saw, talking about how they're winning this thing and they're going to, keep doing this forever and they're willing to go on forever, the US media that is hostile to the president and wants to see our country fail, they look at that and they say, we got an authoritative source here that proves Trump has lost and has zero plan.
There's still a significant number of ship owners and ship captains, obviously, who are in the region who do not want to transit the straits because of the threats from Iran.
Can't blame them.
And that threat is real, and it's in their heads, certainly. Now, they know they can pass through the southern route. We've demonstrated it doing safely, but in their minds, there's still too much risk. So it's less about control that Iran is claiming. It's more about influence and the threat of disrupting the Straits of Hormuz.
So they say,
I think, is kind of the difference.
The Secretary of Energy came out yesterday and told Brett Baer, you were on the show 2 days ago, he was on yesterday, they have an average of 8 to 9 million barrels of oil per day are currently moving through the Strait. That's what prompted the Iranians to answer that. We prefer 20 million barrels, but they say we're moving it through. And that was, we have said we are moving it through without a lot of fanfare. So it shows that there's something happening there. General, right now in this holding pattern, the Iranians feel they have the advantage. The president feels he has the advantage. Who do you think has the advantage?
Well, a couple things. Well, I do think the United States does, for a fact.
And that's the thing. But Iran, in their minds, they think they've got an ace up their sleeve because they see the U.S. midterms coming. They see the rise of communism in America coming. They see these candidates that want to see America lose as often as possible and are sympathetic to their cause, who may gain power in our government and may hamper the president's efforts to continue what is now a humanitarian rescue mission, not just for the ships in the Strait of Hormuz, but for the Iranian people, 91 million people who are essentially being held hostage by their own government. But wait till you hear what the general has to say.
The truth is, what the Iranians did in taking charge of the Straits in terms of disrupting it and influencing it on March the 2nd, right after we began the war on February the 28th, had impact. Obviously, we went to a ceasefire on April the 7th. For what reason? To negotiate with the Iranians over opening the Straits of Hormuz.
To give them a chance.
They initiated that talk. Why? Because they wanted the war to stop. And has the war restarted in any consequential way? No. So did they achieve their goal in doing that? Yes. And we moved into a diplomatic phase, and we're still in it 4 months later. And that's the reality. The president's frustrated by that phase because, he's learned the Iranians lie, they cheat, you can't deal with them, they're crazy. These are the president's conclusions about that diplomatic phase.
And now the Secretary of War is out there saying the blockade could go on indefinitely, and we have a timeline in place, these pipelines, these overland routes. Once all that's set up, the blockade can end. So there are two ways out of this. One way is go back to full military operations, bridges, power plants, all that stuff. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully peace happens. But if there are attacks by Iran, that could still happen. Hopefully it doesn't go there. But let's just say the fighting is over and the blockade sticks around. In 2 years, no one's going to care about the Strait of Hormuz. You might have a country like China that has friendly relations with Iran and buys all their oil that still gets it out through the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, fine. But the ability of this regime to exert any pressure on the world's economy will be completely gone. So their ability to threaten the world economy, that's going to be gone. Their ability to launch ballistic missiles, that's already gone. And their ability to build a nuclear program, that's also gone. So what do they have left if this goes the peaceful route? The same things they would have left eventually if they decide to get back into combat operations. So I don't see a way out for them that ends favorably with this same regime in charge. But here's what Iran's aiming for. Listen.
Applying increased economic pressure, what Secretary Besson is doing in epic economic fury is really significant. And, the details of that, I think they'll reveal more of it. And that, when you add it on to the blockade, is quite dramatic.
There's going to be no money.
No one knows if that's going to force the Iranians to take a knee here or not. I don't even think the Iranians know. I think what the Iranians want to do is resist all of that. They don't care about the suffering in their people.
Yeah.
They believe time is on their side, and they'll ride this thing out as best they can. I believe that is their intention number one. Their intention number two, as we get closer to the midterms, is likely to increase violent and aggressive activity, believing that the administration will not react to it in any consequential way because it'll drive up oil prices prior to the election. That would be a fundamental miscalculation on their part once again. Because the president has lots of tools in his hands here.
And what's the other thing we saw just a couple of weeks ago? Remember, there were combat operations taking place over here because Iran was launching things that they shouldn't at peaceful neighbors and peaceful ships, and the U.S. took action against that to stop it. And then they came back, they called the president again, and they said they wanted a new round of negotiations. So Iran has miscalculated every single time. They have brought the aggressive use of force into this equation. So if they think they're going to get a whole bunch of arms together for some sort of operation that perhaps happens in October, right before the midterm elections, to try and be a black swan event that swings this thing for the communists and gets rid of Trump completely as far as his political ability to protect America is concerned, that's a miscalculation. Meanwhile, as they try and build up to get to some point like that where they would be able to exert force in some meaningful way that captures the world's attention, this blockade is going to be doing its thing. The new economic aspects of this will be unveiled very shortly. We're going to see things happen in Iran that nobody thought would ever happen, that has never been seen in the course of any siege operation with one country blockading another in worldwide history. And the hope here is to get the Iranian people out of this and to get the world economy out of this as peacefully as possible. We'll have to see if Iran wants that. We'll have to see if they actually want to negotiate in any meaningful way, or if they're just never going to do that, and if we can never trust them, because everything they've signed up until now, they have proven isn't worth the paper it's written on. What do you think about that? I'll see you in the next video.